Curious, setting the stage. Look at the wealth and military reach of the modern United States. It's easy to assume this level of dominance was inevitable, but if we rewind the clock back past the concrete and steel, the historical record tells a totally different story. For over a century after Europeans mopped its coastlines, almost nobody wanted North America. When Christopher Columbus stumbled upon the Caribbean, Spain and Portugal simply drew a line down the map to split the non-Christian world between them. They focused almost entirely on the south. Expeditions found massive stockpiles of indigenous gold and silver in Central and South America. When a few early explorers ventured north, they found dense forests, harsh winters, and zero gold. So the reigning superpowers wrote off the entire northern continent as a useless wasteland. It took almost a full century before the English decided to try their luck. Their first real attempt at a colony, Roanoke, mysteriously vanished without a trace. When they tried again at Jamestown in 1607, the settlers barely survived starvation and disease. Early English settlers spent their first decades simply trying to outlast the winter on a continent the world's actual superpowers had already rejected. Even by 1763, after Britain defeated the French for control of the region, the 13 American colonies were effectively pinned against the Atlantic coast. They were boxed in by hostile powers, dense mountain ranges, and sprawling native territories. To pay for that war, the British Parliament began levying heavy taxes on the colonists. The colonists rejected the core premise of paying taxes to a government where they held absolutely no voting power. That specific, intractable dispute over representation triggered open rebellion, leading straight to the Declaration of Independence. But winning a war is very different from running a country. Their first attempt at a national government, the Articles of Confederation, was a disaster. The 13 states operated as independent, competing nations. They couldn't coordinate trade, they couldn't enforce laws, and the entire project began collapsing inward. Facing total failure, the founders scrapped the original system. They wrote a completely new constitution to build a functional federal authority, electing George Washington to lead it. Yet even with a working government, the United States was still just a small, vulnerable republic clinging to the edge of a massive continent. To break out of that box, they needed a demographic shockwave. This chart shows early American population growth, revealing a dramatic exponential spike. In those early decades, the average family had 7 children. Because of that birth rate, the national population was effectively doubling every 20 years. Millions of new citizens needed places to live and farm. That sheer human volume created relentless pressure, pushing settlers westward into unclaimed lands, territories that were the traditional hunting grounds of native tribes, who were violently displaced in the process. At the exact moment America needed more room, France's leader, Napoleon Bonaparte, desperately needed cash to fund his impending invasion of Britain. The US originally just wanted to buy the port of New Orleans. Instead, Napoleon offered them the ultimate real estate deal, all of the French territory for a mere $15 million. The Louisiana Purchase doubled the physical size of the United States overnight. More importantly, it gave the Americans absolute control over the Mississippi River. With that vital trade route secured, the floodgates for mass Western migration were wide open. In a flash, extreme hyperfertility and geopolitical luck shifted America into a new gear. The cautious coastal republic became a relentless engine of territorial consumption. Driven by the belief in manifest destiny, the idea that the nation was ordained to span the continent, the U.S. rapidly vacuumed up land. They bought Florida from Spain, annexing the independent Republic of Texas, and negotiated a line on a map with Britain to secure the Oregon Territory. To grab California and the Southwest, the United States provoked an opportunistic, brutal border war with Mexico, ultimately paying millions to keep the conquered land. But this breakneck speed carried a fatal political flaw. Every time a new territory was carved out, it triggered a bitter, violent debate in Congress over whether that land would permit or outlaw slavery. The constant expansion fractured the country geographically and ideologically, neatly dividing the industrial, free states in the north from the agricultural, slave-dependent economy of the South. Decades of compromises finally collapsed. When Abraham Lincoln was elected president in 1860, Southern states believed he would abolish slavery entirely. They seceded, and the fracture erupted into the deadliest military conflict in American history. The rapid Western expansion was so successful that it almost killed the host. The sheer speed of adding new land directly fueled the internal rupture that tore the country apart. After surviving the Civil War and finalizing its continental borders, America's expansionist momentum didn't stop. It spilled into the oceans. It started with bizarre legislation like the Guano Island Act, allowing citizens to claim random uninhabited islands just to harvest bird droppings for fertilizer. Soon, they were making massive offshore acquisitions. The U.S. bought Alaska from Russia for a bargain $7 million, and American businessmen orchestrated a takeover of Hawaii to secure a highly strategic naval base. Then, in 1898, a U.S. warship sank in a mysterious explosion in Havana Harbor. The U.S. blamed Spain, quickly declared war, and crushed Spanish forces, capturing Cuba, Puerto Rico, and the Philippines in one swift stroke. President Theodore Roosevelt capitalized on this new footprint, building up a massive navy to project power worldwide. To connect the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans, the U.S. engineered the Panama Canal. In the span of a single human lifetime, a fractured, isolated republic had consumed a continent, wiped out the last remnants of Columbus's empire, and established itself as an undeniable overseas global power, right as World War I was beginning. The challenges of the early colonies were raw and physical: starvation, disease, and simply surviving the winter. But managing an unprecedented global superpower comes with an entirely different, incredibly heavy burden. Modern American life is in a state of constant whiplash. Extreme economic cycles of boom and bust wipe out wealth just as quickly as they create it. Massive technological leaps continuously rewrite the rules of daily life, transforming the physical assembly line into the digital server farm in a matter of decades. This rapid modernization is paired with severe crises of faith in the government itself. In the 1970s, the Watergate scandal and the ensuing presidential resignation infused the national culture with a deep, lingering disillusionment. That loss of trust helped incubate the modern culture wars. Today, the population is heavily polarized, split into fiercely opposed ideological camps, battling over cultural values and the exact role the government should play in its citizens' lives. Recently, this intense polarization escalated from political rhetoric into direct, violent action. The peaceful transfer of power, a bedrock of the Republic since Washington, was physically challenged by rioters breaching the U.S. Capitol. The 250-year record suggests that rapid transformations, whether in borders or technology, consistently force these deep internal confrontations. The energy that builds the nation's power remains inextricably linked to the forces that test its unity.